What drives someone to start their own business? Often that's a light bulb moment when you think, I can do this on my own, or there has to be a better way. Maybe it's even about patenting an idea because you know it can truly help businesses. But I believe that's just a small part of what pushes people into entrepreneurship. Social media, while it's really a significant source of income for many, can sometimes distort our perception. We see others succeeding in businesses and think, I could do that too. And while you might very well have the potential, let's face it, the entrepreneurial journey is likely the hardest challenge you'll ever encounter. What's up, everyone? This is Fit for Business with me, Jared Lane. If you could do us a favor, if you're watching this on YouTube and tap that subscribe button, or if you are listening on Spotify, go ahead and tap that follow button. We appreciate the support. Welcome to episode 28. And for those of you who don't know who I am, I'm the owner and founder of Socialtopia, a social media marketing agency based out of Monroe, New York. We've been in business now for just over 6 years. Our agency primarily partners with fitness entrepreneurs and home service professionals, helping them elevate their brands and achieve their marketing goals. So as humans, we consume a lot, and unfortunately, a significant amount of food goes to waste, especially in restaurants. But what if there was a way to beat the system and minimize that food waste? Today, I'm excited to introduce our guest, Matt Wampler, co-founder of ClearCogs. This AI-powered system not only helps with reducing food waste, but also boosts profits for businesses. Matt, welcome to the pod.
Jared, thanks for having me.
Yeah, brother, we appreciate you. So, yeah, thanks for having us here on like one of the hottest weeks in the Northeast as it's breaking records here. Yeah, if you could do us a favor and just tell us a little bit about yourself, Matt, and ClearCogs.
Yeah, look, Jared, I'm a ex-restaurant owner, spent the better part of a decade as a Jimmy John's franchisee. And later on in life, I got into programming and data science and, I ended up founding this company called ClearCogs. You just realized what kind of technology was out there and the outdated stuff we were using in restaurants and fundamentally said, let's go do something about it. So, at ClearCogs, we address the $160 billion a year problem that restaurants have, and that is we don't know who's going to walk through the door.
Hmm.
And therefore, we don't know what to prep, we don't know what to purchase, we don't know who to staff. And we're just guessing at it. So what we allow is we're able to pull in all of their data and turn that into a data-driven decision around who's going to come in the door and help them run a more efficient operation.
Hmm. I mean, and I love that. Now, you came up with that idea and or it was like kind of like a partnership with you and your the co-founder, like who was it like boots on the ground like you because you were like in the restaurant industry since you were been I think 21 if I read that correctly. um and I think your partner, right? So like was kind of like a combination of both because you guys met later on in life. Like how did like Clear Cogs come to like that like light bulb moment?
Yeah, man, I was fortunate to find the right co-founder where we just really meshed well. And I would
Mm,
say that it was a, right brain, left brain. I came from that at one angle, he came from it from a totally different angle. And if we would have built exactly what I wanted, it would have failed. If we would have built what he wanted, it would have failed. But, after talking to hundreds of restaurant operators, we finally, meshed together to figure out a lot of the problems they were facing came down to the fact that they didn't know who was going to walk through the door. So they'd ask, oh, I'd like this, I'd like that. If you just kept asking why, and I give my co-founder a lot of credit for that, he was the why guy. Why? Why? It would always come back to, I just don't know who's going to walk through the door tomorrow.
like those simple questions, like just why? Like he was kind of like absorbing everything like a sponge, it sounds like, kind of
E-
collecting that data.
Exactly. I knew enough of the fundamentals as to where to ask questions, but
Yeah.
you'd ask how, how do we fix your food costs? Well, if you could give me a systematic report of, what I used every week, that would really help. Why? Well, that would help me understand what I've been using. And then I could look at it on a dashboard. Why do you want a dashboard? Well, then I could actually see it. Well, why do you want that? Well, it would help me figure out how much I should prep for tomorrow. It's like, okay, well, why don't we get rid of the dashboard? why don't we get rid of telling you all of the usage for the last couple of weeks? If I was just to give you the number of how many bins of lettuce to slice tomorrow, would that solve the problem? It's like, yeah, that's actually what I really want.
Yeah, that's interesting, because obviously there's been a big boom in AI as we know it, especially, post COVID. Um, how long, was Clear Cogs like a thing before Clear Cogs kind of like came to light? I mean, obviously, I wouldn't say obvious, but it sounds like without, going deeper down the rabbit hole, this is something then I guess you've been fundamentally developing along your, I guess, restaurant entrepreneur journey.
No, I mean, it's really been around for about 3 years. The first year of it was just two guys in a garage tinkering. Is there a business to be had here? And it was only after we put together kind of a loose MVP and put it in place in some of my cousin's restaurants and cut his bread waste in half that we were like, okay, I think there's a business here. And so we've been doing the AI thing for a long time. We don't really talk about it, or we hadn't talked about it until this whole ChatGPT thing came out because most restaurants are scared of AI.
Sure.
But the simple fact is AI is really good at predicting the next event in a sequence. And so that event could be a word, just like ChatGPT protecting or figuring out what the next word in a sequence is. But it's also
Mm.
really good at figuring out, if I'm looking at bread usage and I'm looking at it in a sequence, what is the next number in that sequence? What is the bread going to be tomorrow or the next week?
Yeah, that's it. I mean, we're gonna come back to that. But yeah, so thanks so much for obviously, telling us a little bit about a Clear Cogs. I'm excited for you to see like the growth that you've had so far, and I've been enjoying watching your journey along. Like I'm like front row seat on LinkedIn, just seeing, consuming your content, and I was like, I gotta get this guy on the pod and just, hear his story, and like, so our viewers and our listeners can, hear from your entrepreneurial journey. Uh,
Hopefully you're not watching it like it's a slow motion train wreck and you're just waiting to see what it hits.
No, 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 definitely. That's not what I'm here for. That's not what I'm about. With that being said, would you be so let's jump into some questions here if that's cool.
Let's do it.
Yeah, cool. So, going back to that, entrepreneurial journey, can you share maybe like a pivotal moment from your entrepreneurial journey where whether it's here or Jimmy John's where you suffered some significant setbacks and how you overcame them?
Yeah, so look, I started out in restaurants young. I took over my first Jimmy John's right out of college. I was 21 years old. Some guy had run his store into the ground and needed a patsy to get out of the lease. And I was the 21-year-old kid with no assets and nothing to lose. And I said, like, I'll roll the dice. And I somehow found myself owning a Jimmy John's franchise.
At
And
21.
at 21, or I guess I was 22 at the time.
Wow.
Uh, just out of college, it was kind of my first job. And my first, I mean, there was lots of challenges, right? You walk in and the air conditioning's out and the equipment's all broken. You're working through all of that. But the first real challenge was one of my assistant managers, my workhorse, the guy that was running half the shifts,
Mm.
basically came to me, saw that I was in dire straits. There was no way out. And he said, I want you to double my salary or I'm walking. And he knew that I had no staff and he knew the thing would fall apart if he wasn't there. And it was kind of the first big pivotal test for me. And, I remember thinking like, I don't know what to do, but I'm not going to be beholden and live in fear and be extorted. So, I let him go and it left me working 10 management shifts a week. And this store was basically open 24 hours a day. So it's 10, 12-hour shifts, 120 hours a week. And you do the math on that. That means 3 of the days you work 24 hours straight. And so like I found myself in this position and I'm like sleeping in the back of the store. I lost 30 pounds in 30 days. Could not have been healthy. I'm sure I lost a couple years of my life there. Um,
Yeah.
but coming out of it, right, and working through the problem on your own was so empowering, right? Like I wouldn't recommend it to anybody, but the outcome from it was one where it's like, wow, I now know how far I can push myself. I know what the bounds of the box are.
So now this is at 21 years of age. Now, if I had to put myself at that, side by side when you were 21, not identical stories, but no two stories are the same. But at 21, you found yourself owning a Jimmy John's. It's like talk about being like, I guess, right timing, so to speak. It's like divine timing, you could say. Now, how long were you doing those shifts before you were just like, hey, a change has got to happen because you're gonna like mentally break down at that point where you say you sounded, very unhealthy, right? 30 pounds in 30 days. And we're not talking about like, that old McDonald's, story where that guy ate McDonald's for 30 days and gained the weight. You're working, you're cranking out the hours here, and it's just something's got to give.
Well, for the record, I lived on Jimmy John's for like years, and it did not have the same outcome as living on McDonald's. So
Oh, well, yeah, it's neither here nor there.
it was not an episode of Super Size Me.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, exactly.
no, so I mean, it was never by design. I didn't want to be working 120 hours a week. I just
Right.
didn't have the talent, and so
It's necessary.
yeah, you could sacrifice service quality and just turn it loose with somebody,
Hmm.
or you could hold that quality standard high and do it yourself. And so my fundamental mission over the next 6 weeks was how do I find, train, and empower the managers to take this role? And it's great about being like 21, 22 is you've got a lot of energy. You can really push yourself. So I
Yeah,
didn't work
you can do the
smarter.
all-nighters.
Yeah, I didn't work smarter, I worked harder.
Right.
But it was this amazing moment where, when you're in the trenches and you're really laying your soul on the line, people want to help you. People want to be part of something that is extraordinary. And watching me fight through that and, working hip to hip with me, people rallied behind me and we found great managers and
Okay.
slowly but surely it went from 120 to like, 100, and then it kind of hung around 80 to 100 for the next 6 months and slowly became a normal human being again.
Okay, so you saw in that happening, people are like, Matt is just on another level. He's a workhorse and he's dedicated to this business and he's dedicated to us. I want to work with him and for him. So you saw that happening.
Yeah, I mean, it's like Matt's falling asleep. Like that, Bill comes over and is like, "Hey, Matt, I can run the rest of the shift. Go home, get some sleep. I got this." And it's like, Bill, sure you can do it. I got it. We're gonna take care of it. I will make sure it's perfect for you in the morning. You know, it's people. It's a people business.
So you took that trust and you got back and it was fine.
Well, sometimes, but most of the time, yes.
So at 21, that's really, I wasn't expecting that. So now, what would you say inspired you into, to start your journey into the world of business? I mean, for right now, it's kind of sounds like you were thrown into it, but if you had to say, like, what was there an inspiration behind it at that age?
It was funny. I listened to your whole intro, and you gave a lot of reasons. The one I didn't hear was naivete, and that was definitely my situation. It was the right place, right time. I'm dyslexic and ADHD, and just like I can't imagine going and working in a cubicle. Like, let's give it a try. And I did not think it. I mean, I thought it through, but I didn't know the extent of what I was getting into, and
Hmm.
in some ways, I'm glad I didn't because I might not have taken the journey and it was a life-altering experience.
Right. You might not be where you were today.
100% would not be.
So now the roller coaster of entrepreneurship, it influences us, in different ways. Um, can you think of any time like during this entrepreneurship quest, as I like to call it, where, having like healthy lifestyle approach has impacted, you know, your business in any sort of way, just by having those, healthy lifestyle tactics. Obviously not going back to those 120-hour work weeks, but fast forward, maybe later in life where you kind of were like not necessarily slowing down, but saying, hey, I need to like take care of Matt here.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to view it from the opposite. So it's more, I can always tell the negative effects of when
Mm,
I'm not being healthy. So when you're not sleeping right, you're not eating right, you're overweight, you're drinking too much, like I can see those effects, in the months that I am unhealthy. I mean, I think that the thing that a routine or fitness does give me is clarity of mind.
Mm,
So, I tend to be a little less on the fitness side. I probably should go work out more, but, I'll do a lot of walking. And, I find that being outside, fresh air, exercise, away from screens is when I do my best, most creative thinking.
mm. Yeah, no, I couldn't agree with you more. So I've been following your journey, like I said, since we've been connected here on LinkedIn and just consuming the content. One post that I had seen, I think it was a couple of months ago, where I believe ClearCogs, if I'm not mistaken, has been going through trying to get capital, or if you've gotten capital, and you can clarify me on that. For our listeners, what is it like going into the belly of the beast and looking to seek capital and pitch and raise capital, to help grow the business?
Jared, it was really, really hard for me. I came from the world of restaurants, SMB, like you had a P&L, you were taking out an SBA loan. I'd never raised capital from people before. I'd never known what it was like to call somebody up and ask, would you like to make an investment in my idea? And, it was really intimidating for me.
Mm,
I've learned a lot along the way. One of the things I've learned is, look, it's people, right? So if you're going and pitching a group of venture capitalists, these are all just people. They care about human connection. They care about stories. If you treat it like a cold business, that's not necessarily how capital raising is done. And we've gone and raised our pre-seed and raised 1.5 million and are raising a couple $1 million for our seed round currently. And that hasn't changed. I'm sure you get to a Series B, C, it becomes a little bit more cold business. But
mm.
people, there's an active ecosystem of angel investors that invest in startups. There are more venture capitalists out there than you would expect.
I see a
And
lot
look,
of them online.
yeah,
Like when you if you type in entrepreneur, you see like there's hundreds of thousands of people on LinkedIn that are labeled, angel investors. So now you said it was intimidating, right? From the get-go. How many pitches have you made in person before you got the first round?
so we were in a post-pandemic world, so it was all done virtually, which
Okay.
adds a whole nother layer of complication to it.
Yeah, because you that emotional connection, not saying it can't happen, but like it's not as personable, right? You can't shake that person's hand, sit down and, I get what you're saying. So how was that during that pandemic climate, doing that remotely?
So it was good and bad. It was bad in the sense that we didn't get to meet people in person.
Right.
And if you're not able to meet people in person, it's hard to make those connections, and it does make the fundraising a little more difficult. But on the upside, when you're doing virtual meetings, you can take a lot more of them. So look, we've
Sure.
spoken. I've probably had 1,000 pitches in the
1,000.
last 2.5 years. Like it's crazy.
So and how long was each like pitch? Is like a 30-minute pitch, hour pitch? Like like give or take, like where are you at on that?
Yeah, it's really, 30 minutes for the most part. As you go deeper in due diligence, the meetings get longer, but you know, investors invest not in points, but in lines. They want to see you connecting dots throughout time. So again, these are people, these are connections, these are relationships. And
Mm,
so it's often not the first relationship or first conversation. Here's a check. It's, I've spoken with you every 8 weeks for the last couple months, and they get to know the company, they get to know you, they know you're not trying to scam anybody, and then they're much more comfortable investing.
for sure. Yeah, I can imagine. The hard-earned coin.
Yeah.
Let's shift this a little bit. I love to ask this question. When the topic of success comes to mind, who do you think of and why?
Yeah, it's interesting. So often in life and in business, what makes us successful is our desire for more, for
Mhm.
better. And, I look at somebody like Warren Buffett, who, has clearly done that in his business life and, done more, gotten better, continued the returns, right? Never let off the gas. But also at the same time in his personal life, been able to not say, I want more, you know, to live in the same house he's always lived, and, you know, to be both content personally while driven on the business side of things. I think that's one of that's success in my mind.
What role would you say brand storytelling plays in your marketing efforts, and how, sharing your personal experiences has helped your entrepreneurial journey here with Clear Cogs?
Yeah, and I was actually going to get to the personal side of it because I think so often we like to hide behind the brand and
Hmm.
talk about what the brand's doing. But, you know, people buy from people. They care about who's behind the brand, you know, who is doing the technical work, who is going to be supporting me, what do they stand for? And so I think it's been a huge part of what we do at ClearCogs is just, you know, not hiding behind the brand and saying, you know, this is who we are. This is why we care about you. I think it's gone a long way. And, you know, I'd be interested as somebody from the marketing world, you know, what's been your experience with that? That certainly seems like a wave that I've seen recently of, you know, not hiding behind the brand being a successful tactic. Um,
Yeah, and it's interesting you say that. So, for me, what I see being successful, right? Because you can have, a brand that has a face and a faceless brand, right? And I had done, I think, a pod about this a couple weeks ago, where if you look at a company like Progressive, right, they have, their face was Flow for quite some time. That has been their advertisement. And Flow has done a phenomenal job, I should say, Progressive has done a phenomenal job in building out this massive brand around this Flo character, right? Everybody can somewhat relate to her. They have increased business. I forgot what the statistics are behind that marketing campaign. But when you think of Progressive, you think of this nice young woman, Flo. Where if you think of like a faceless brand, I was talking about, like the Energizer Bunny, right? So then you have the Energizer Bunny. So when you think of like batteries and getting recharged, like you can equate that to, I think for me, when I think of batteries, I'm like, all right, Energizer, I got to get them. It's just kind of like second hand nature. They have done a phenomenal job in marketing. Now, I know these are very big businesses with big pockets too, but I was kind of just giving my, output. But like for me, what I see really work for like small companies and just like businesses that are like, sole proprietors, if you would, is they have to be out there. They have to share their story. They have to build those like relationships and they have those emotional connections. Because at the end of the day, like you're saying, people want to buy from people. No matter what type of business you're in, they can relate to, you or I, so to speak. Um, so I have the conversation with a lot of entrepreneurs and small business owners like, hey, in like the world that we're in, like you guys need to get in front of the camera more. You need to share your story more. You need to kind of just like provide more value and not, try to pitch people or sell. And that's what I see.
well, look, I was Jimmy John's franchisee, right? Like you're
Yeah.
you're basically buying the brand name so that, you know, people know what they're buying. And one of our primary let's call it business development tactics was sampling. We would go
Mm.
out and cut sandwiches in thirds, individually wrap them. We go to the local businesses and we hand them out. You'd introduce yourself. I'm Matt. I'm the owner of the local Jimmy John's. You know, I just wanted to drop off some free sandwiches, you know,
Yeah.
and build that relationship. But you know, that was it, right? I lived within my four walls otherwise. I didn't have Facebook or LinkedIn or, you know, Instagram or any of that stuff when I was running my business. I was just, you know, I was sleeping in the back of the store. But,
Yeah.
you know, today with social media, I mean, the power of, you know, being able to take that digitally and expand it so much larger. I mean, it's unparalleled. It's one of the greatest regrets I have. When I was running those restaurants, not being more having a digital presence, you know,
Mm.
digitally making those connections.
This and you see people like if you follow like the Gary V's of the world, right? Like, hey, and I say this all the time, but like let's say you get 10 to 20 to 30 views only on LinkedIn. Yeah, that engagement is horrible, I'm not gonna lie. But it's 10 or 20 or 30 people, right? Maybe whatever you do for business, you only need to get that one person a month, like kind of engaged with you to see what you have going on, and that will help you build out your business. So 10 to 20 to 30 views is again depending upon how you decipher it, it could be relatable in different terms for different people, right? And that's what it comes down to. Um,
So one of my favorite people is Sean over at Cali Barbecue Media, and they do a great job at all of this. And one of his philosophies, and I'm going to totally botch the quote, but it's speed times quantity times consistency equals quality, and like that's the formula. So I see so many people in fear of putting things on social media, that it needs to be overly curated. And what if I say something wrong? Well, the wonderful thing about social media is if you put something bad up, no one cares. No one's going to look at it. And when they don't look at it, the algorithms automatically sync it. And like, it's been some of the things that questionable content that I'm like, I'm not sure I should share this, that have done incredibly well. And I would never have guessed. So don't live in fear. You just do, and you'll start seeing results.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as long as you're not out of context and not out of line, right? There's been a lot of people in this lifetime that I'm not going to go down the rabbit hole where, it's just like one tweet can ruin a career. And that's not what we're talking about. But there's a fine line, right? You're just stating a fact where, like, hey, you were recording content or you just like put out a post. And again, it was just, you were kind of not saying you were nervous per se, but this is where people they get their nerves. Like, I don't know how this is going to perform. And then, like, you're saying, oh man, this performed overly beyond your expectations. And that's, I think, where you were going with that.
I'm sure there's 1 in 40 people that probably shouldn't be sharing what's going on in their head, and for that person, they're going to find out the hard way that they probably should. But for the vast majority, the other 39, yeah, go post the stuff.
Yeah.
It's just, if you're an accountant, mid-level accountant at an accounting firm, right? You may think I have the most boring job ever, but there are so many people that are going through exactly what you're going through, right? That would emulate or connect with your experience.
How are you guys staying adaptable in the face of market fluctuations? And like the terms of your like business strategies, based off of like where we are in today's like, market.
It's a good question.
We can come
So
back. Oh, hey, you're good.
no, I'm happy to answer it. So
Okay.
it's kind of funny. I don't think about it a whole lot because, our competition are large businesses, and large businesses struggle in changing climates. As a young startup, we're dynamic. We're constantly iterating and seeking to change. So, we embrace that. Like the more change, the more disruption, the less power the status quo has. So, keeping your ear to the ground, staying informed, staying close to your customers. These are all the things that give you information to make better decisions, especially in the face of, ever-changing market landscape and dynamics.
Hmm. And it is so ever changing, especially with even like the adaptation of AI, and it's consistently growing and expanding and evolving. So you talk about competition. Are there a lot of major players in the landscape that ClearCox is in?
Honestly, no. This is
Okay.
an emerging field. We happen to be at the right place at the right time, and the cost and the cost of this technology has gone down. The power of it's gone up. It's now feasible for us to go in and solve a $5 a day problem using complex machine learning, whereas 10 years ago that would have cost us $100. So
Mm.
it's kind of an emerging field. There's a lot of people that say they do what we do, but there are very few that actually know what they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, it's, that niche market for sure. Do you have a book that you have consumed more than once? If so, what makes you drawn to that book specifically?
The 1 Minute Manager. It was the first book I was given when I took over my first restaurant. It's something that we used to give all of our, employees, partially because it's a brief book. I'm able to read it more than once. But look, I think there's, something about being a cheerleader for your team and having clear communication that is incredibly empowering. And, I certainly saw this in my brief stint in the corporate world, right? Of how often nobody wants to share bad news or negative feedback.
Mm.
And like, if you can have a culture of transparency where it's like, this report was bad and like, I really didn't like this and it disappointed me, and, praising the good things, that simple, fundamental human, feedback is so powerful.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of just like struck like a chord with me with what you just said in the best of ways. I think that's really important, from not only just business, and we can go down to family too, but like society. We can go down this whole, like, I feel like society, as a society, managers are getting more and more accustomed to being able to like say we shouldn't, not necessarily reprimand an employee, but like when they have done something incorrectly or improperly, it needs to be addressed. And now, I've never been a manager or, as a business owner, I've never barked or yelled or even cursed at an employee. I can transparently say I had never have, thankfully. Um, it just has never been my style and I wouldn't do it. Now, I will address an issue when it comes up and say that is incorrect. That's not how we do things here. One of our core values is, integrity, right? So if we make a mistake, we need to learn from it, right? And I don't think that is being addressed enough, with these businesses and corporations out there where they're just letting shit slide where it shouldn't be happening. And they're just allowing for people to kind of step over them, and it's just, this is what I've seen with the newer employees, coming into like industries. Um and then even like as being a parent, having young children, I was raised as a different, on a different wavelength, flip-flopping back here between, conversations. But in my mindset, if there's something that goes on in my house, I like to address it in a firm manner rather just letting it, slide.
So it's funny, the restaurant industry is people managing people, serving people. I mean, my whole job was how do you take 18-year-old minimum wage employees and turn them into general managers, their own, CEO of their $1 million restaurant, right? Like
Right.
that was our whole world. So I spent my formative years in the trenches with people. And, afterwards I went and got my MBA from Duke and they would, take us in and do all these leadership management training classes. And I'm like, you guys are like, this is the ABCs. Like everyone knows, like, come on, this is something you teach in high school. And I was just amazed
At
at
Duke.
how well, yeah, well, it turned out it wasn't the ABCs. That, if you came from the corporate world, that's not how they did things,
Hmm.
right? And that I just, having come from a people-centric business or industry,
Sure.
hadn't realized how poor of managers, you know, these big corporations have. I mean, and it all comes down to this. People want a sense of purpose. Maybe 50 years ago, everybody was happy to show up and follow a checklist, not think about it. I've done my job and clock out. But today, especially with younger generations, they want to be inspired. They want to be led. They want to be doing something that matters. And if you can show up every day and tell your team why what they're doing matters and why the success of what they're doing matters, that starts a spark, that starts a fire that truly leads to the great results that you probably want.
Yeah, I mean, people want to get behind a story. They want to get behind a purpose. They don't want to just be kind of like trolling along, so to speak.
Well, and that purpose could be like, Sally is my, wife's best friend, and we've got to give a PowerPoint presentation to her tomorrow, and you're working on the PowerPoint. Like, it would mean so much to my wife if we did a really good job for her friend. Like that's not like I'm changing the world, right? But that's an emotional story that, as I'm doing the PowerPoint, I'm like, I don't want to let, Matt's wife down. That's never
Right.
actually happened, by the way, but the hypothetical
Yeah, no,
example.
I'm following you, man. We're good. Um, so yeah, let's go back to this question. When you've been met with failures in the past or setbacks, how did you maintain a growth mindset from those lessons learned during those setbacks?
I spend a lot of my time taking negative events and figuring out how to turn them into a positive. What are we going to?
Amazing.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, Bill just quit and he's the general manager. It's like the whole world's in shambles, the team's all disjarred and it's how do you create momentum out of this? Well, and that makes it Lindsay's opportunity. And she's always wanted her shot, and now it just lines up perfectly. And so, um, look, my world is constant setbacks. We're constantly failing. And it's, what are we taking away from it? Did we learn something? Is it something we're just never going to do again? It's all, how do you take negatives and turn them into positives?
So now let me ask you this question. Everybody's different. I know a lot of people, that are entrepreneurs and business leaders, especially like during, doing these podcasts even more and more. Are you somebody personally that takes these setbacks and wears it on your sleeve? Do you take it like, can you sleep at the night and like kind of just like, all right, I can like reset and like go to bed? Or are you somebody that like lays in bed and like, hey, this is the plan. This is what I gotta do when I wake up. Like, where do you fall in line with that?
It depends on the severity of the issue. Actually, the thing I struggle with most is when you spend a lot of time reframing negative events into positives.
Hmm.
You tend to spend a lot of time looking back, or not even looking back, but trying to parse out what the truth is. Like, is this actually a positive, or am I in a really bad position? Or am I believing my own stories, or is it a positive? But if you can kind of get to that place, you can sleep at night pretty well, where you've accepted the facts, the negative event, and you've come up with how you're going to turn it into a positive.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Listen, I can't say that I'm not one to let negative things weigh on me throughout the course of the day. I mean, I still get my job done and do what I need to do. But at the end of the night, anyone that's consumed my content, I always could talk about it here and there. I take melatonin and it helps me kind of just I read a book, I pop my melatonin, and I'm out. No matter how my day is going, whether it's I've had a great day or something bad's happened, I'm out, and I don't wake up until that alarm wakes up, unless our kids wake us up at night, which it happens sometimes. So that's how I have that. Is there one core belief that you have that is constant no matter what?
Well, I mean, I think it's what I was just talking about, right? We can't control what happens in our lives. We can't control all these external things, but we can control how we frame them in our minds. We can control how we view them. And, if you can accept that and learn to turn negatives into positives, and not be a hostage to, you know, the external factors of the world, like, it's one of the most empowering things ever.
All right, there are a lot of external factors of the world happening in today's day and age, for
Hey,
sure.
let me tell you what, I got laid off, or the company had a restructuring 2 weeks before the pandemic. It's the only corporate job I ever had. And it
Oh
was
no way.
like, yeah, it was like, man, this is rough. Like, I didn't see it coming. Then the pandemic came, and instead of using it as a, hey, I'm going to feel bad for myself, it's like, you know what, this is a great opportunity. And by the way, they're now doing stimulus checks, and I put in front employment. I'm going to take this opportunity to go, do a Wharton's analytics class, and then go learn to program online. And, sure enough, it ended up being one of the most, you know, I learned the most I've ever learned. I found my way into the right career and was able to go off and launch an analytics consulting business, and then ultimately ClearCog. So I wouldn't have been here without that negative.
So let's talk on that for a second. You lost your job during the pandemic,
2 weeks before, even worse.
2 weeks before the pandemic. So now here's Matt, 2 weeks before the pandemic, the world shuts down, and you're trying to reframe your mind like, hey, what am I going to do with my career? And now I guess you had like a 2 or 3 year old at that time, give or
Yeah,
take.
walk in the door, and my wife and all of her friends are there waiting at the kitchen table. Had no idea. So why are
Yeah.
you home from work? It's like, honey, I got laid off. Own what happened, and then it's like, all right, we're gonna figure this out.
So during that time, you went back into online courses for analytics. And then did you start studying AI at that time as well?
I was part of a data science, 9-part data science certificate program that Harvard did online, which seriously, the best class I've taken in my entire life. And yeah,
Clearly.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I learned enough in that analytics class to, or, it was programming in R that I knew that that there was power in the technology, but I wasn't good enough to be able to build enterprise software.
No, I mean, I'm mind blown, right? We always hear about like, hey, the next big thing was gonna be developed like during, COVID, post COVID, and now here you are, you and your partner, have this, AI data driven, software that has been, created to the world, ClearCognix. It's an amazing story.
And
Uh,
hey, it's where I met my partner. He was running his first startup at the time, and I came on as a unpaid advisor. It was like I think he tried to hire me, and I was like, I'm not going to
oh no
come.
way.
Yeah, I'm like, this isn't for me. But you seem like a great guy, and like I'm happy to help out. A half hour a week, and without that relationship, I certainly wouldn't be where I am today.
And now, what was his startup at that time?
Just audio. If you ever go click on one of those, you go to an article, they have the listen to the article. They had a
Sure.
two-way marketplace between voice talent and the publishers to
Okay.
do quick, voice overs for the articles.
So looking ahead for you, for Matt specifically, what aspirations do you have in terms of, I guess, business achievements and maybe even innovative marketing strategies that you might have thinking about currently?
Well, look, we just got the trademark for the restaurant Copilot. Um, our ultimate vision is how do we create that fractional CFO, COO that sits on top of your data and can help help manage the metrics, the
Mm,
analytics of the hospitality business so you can go focus on what really matters. And that's creating those magical experiences for your guests and training your team, inspiring and motivating. Um, you know, that's what we get up every day to do. And thankfully, this was our vision prior to these large language models. So it's been an incredible, fast-paced journey as they've come out to help us realize it. And I couldn't be more excited.
that's amazing. I want to share a quote with you. How you do anything is how you do everything. Do you agree with that quote?
No, not at all.
No. And,
No.
and then is there a reason why?
I mean, I feel like that's something you say in a big bureaucracy because you want everyone to work a little bit harder or make it make the final tweaks a little better. I mean, I view everything as a cost benefit analysis, right? There are diminishing returns to some items. Some items, when we go to restaurants, right? 95% of an answer is a non-answer. They won't use it. Getting 100 million data points down into one data point that's clearly usable unlocks a ton of value, right? Now, that's the difference between, 99% and 100%. That really matters. How we do that really matters. Now, that does not mean that when I go put together a slide that I need it to be 100%, right? I
Hmm.
may get diminishing returns after 70%. It may take me 10 hours to get it to 70%, and it may take another 300 hours to get it to 100%, right? Like there's a big difference between those two. So no, I think that I think you could probably spin it in a way that you could say, well, a cost benefit analysis way of looking at the world. If you do that to everything, that makes sense. But no, I think fundamentally every problem's different, every person's different. They all need to be treated different, and it's really nice and easy to think of everything as a formula, and we're going to do it all exactly the same. But yeah, it doesn't resonate with me. Why is it one of yours that you like?
It's also, yeah, hey, listen, there's no right or wrong answer, and that was a great answer actually, and that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for people's like immediate responses, how they feel. So that quote happens to be one of my favorite quotes of all
Of course it was. Well, give me the pushback. Tell me why it's a great quote and where I might be thinking about it differently or
No, no,
how.
no. But this is where I was going to go with that. So it happens to be my favorite quote. I love to, for me personally, and it doesn't have to be for you. Live and eat and breathe by it. For me personally, do you have like a favorite quote that you live and eat and breathe by? That's kind of like to preface it from it. I'm curious, like, so that's mine. Do you happen to have personally a
Oh,
quote that you love?
no redirecting. I'm pushing it back to you. The question holds. How do
Oh
you
yeah,
view
so
that
for
quote?
me personally, and like I don't uphold like anybody else to those, standards, right? So it's just like, all right, well, how I live my life every day, whether it's in business, whether it's, my personal behind the scenes, what people don't see what I'm doing. And for me, that's how I view it, my work ethics, if you speak to like one of my closest friends who like was with my best man, he'll tell you he's like, you have like one of the hardest work ethics I've, ever seen damn near in my life. It's just like what I come to terms and learn to do. It's how, it's the way I treat my employees. It's the way I treat my clients, the things that go on behind the scenes with my family. It's the way I am when it comes to like my fitness. Balls to the wall, all in, all day, every day. And for me, that's how I've consumed that quote. And that's what I me when I say, hey, how you do everything is how you do anything. So I look at it like that, and I can understand your viewpoint from like kind of like an analytic perspective because I know, just even hearing our conversation, you're a very analytics guy, which rightfully so. This is what you do for a living. Um, so now, do you have, and it's okay if you don't, but is there like a quote that maybe you created or that you have like printed out? So that quote is printed in my office, and it has been for like the past 8 years.
Yeah, I mean, I almost carved this into a bench. I do woodworking, and I never actually did it, but I probably should have. So I always say perception is reality, and that is not to say like, I go out there and lie to everybody, but that, we control how we view events. We
Hmm.
control our perception of those events, and like the reality you live in, whether you're a victim, whether you're the hero, is all a matter of framing. It's all about how you want to choose to perceive events.
That is actually a fantastic quote, and I like how you kind of broke that down. Perception is reality. Yeah, I dig that, brother. Well, listen, Matt, I think we've gotten through, our questions here, on today's episode of the pod. I can't thank you enough for, taking time and, being a guest here, on the Fit for Business podcast. I've really enjoyed our conversation. And yeah, man, thanks for dropping in today.